very big welcome to Kim Longinotto and Ollie Huddleston, who have worked together on 6 films. And they're here for a couple of hours, so as Kim just said, very informal, do chip in when you want.
Well, we could begin just by showing a clip.
Yeah.
Should we do that? Because that's always better to
into
start.
it a bit, yeah.
And this is the first one we did together. And what the first clip is it's the beginning of a film. It's what we always have the most thought and the most trouble with. I don't know if you guys have the same thing, that the beginning is what you have to spend a lot of time thinking about. And you'll see that actually, when I was looking at the clips to sort of select them, I could see there's a definite pattern with the beginnings.
Is there?
Yeah, definite.
Right.
You know, it's really marked that the beginnings are all doing the same thing.
Right.
So, so what the bit, and also they're sort of giving you sort of layers of, you know, it depends how much you want to read into it. You could just see it as a scene, or you can read lots of different things into it. So this first one is actually the first one, Rob. It's Runaway, and it's a film. The very first one, we didn't know each other, and it's in a hostel for runaway girls. And I remember Ollie, when we watched the first scene that was shot, he sort of had to go out for a walk, and he said, "Oh God, do you remember it was the policeman? This girl who came to say she'd been abused by her dad, and then they discovered that it was a policeman."
Yeah.
And so they couldn't do anything about it, and then she left and you never saw her again. And Ollie said, "I don't think we can use this in the film, it's too upsetting, and also it doesn't go anywhere." And so what we did with the first scene was you first of all setting up, just very briefly, the sort of geography of the place. So you see somebody coming in, and also then there's a little scene of a girl saying the call to prayer. And people who from Iran or from Muslim background would know that women aren't meant to do the call to prayer. So there's a little layer there that you wouldn't necessarily get unless you knew that. But I love the sort of defiance of her, this little sort of 11-year-old doing the call to prayer. But she's kind of allowed to because she hasn't reached puberty yet. That's how they sort of justified it to themselves. And then the first girl that comes is the least upsetting of all the girls. She's the most like one of us would be, cross with our parents and wanting more freedom, and it's the sort of most universal one, which is why we thought that let's let them in a little bit gently. And then a conversation where you set up what the place is like and you're giving a background. So we could just show that clip and then...
I don't remember this one being a particularly hard opening.
No.
Lots of the others have been really,
I think
really
this
difficult.
film was really, you cut it really quickly. I think you cut
Well, Kim didn't shoot very much on this at all. It's like sort of 15 hours of material, I seem to remember. So there wasn't that much choice, but at the same time... No, in that sense. It wasn't like loads and loads of stuff. But we always try to find a way where you're really intrigued in the opening, obviously. And there's something about having I've never seen a young woman say the call to prayer. So it kind of sets the scene for what you're about to see, really. So, yeah.
And in fact, that was the first thing that Ollie told me, was when he was watching the rushes, he kept saying I should have held things for longer. And because I've learned so much, but what I've learned from editing with Ollie, it's actually changed how I actually shoot now, because I'm always thinking and bearing in mind what Ollie needs. And I know, we can show you the shot which you were really
always fills me
about.
with dread that she's kind of filming, thinking of me as the last thing.
We've got one shot where you were actually crossing me because I hadn't held it, and
right.
I said, but Ollie, she'd left, and I was going to get left behind. But he said, it's only 2 seconds. I remember you saying it's only 2 seconds that you need, and then he can actually make the rhythm what he wants it to be. Whereas, you know, I was sort of always worrying about being left, so I was cutting too quickly. There's
something about sort of, particularly in your films, I find myself trying to kind of stretch reality. If you're with someone in a scene, there's not so much in the scene you're about to see, but if someone tells you something very emotional, and Kim's films are often very emotional, it's giving the audience, giving us all time to sort of think and feel something, just a beat. It could be a couple of beats before you leave something.
That's what he'd say, just a beat, Kim.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what. Should we look at this?
Thanks, Rob.
The opening to Runaway.
وایسا بیاد پزشک خانومی.
خانم ابراهیمی
برای چی گریه میکنی؟ ها؟ وقتی زندش اومدی بخواد برسه برای چی گریه میکنی؟ ها؟ از چی ناراحتی؟ از چی ناراحتی؟ عزیزم؟ از چی ناراحتی؟ وقتی میخوام ببرنت عزیزم برای چی ناراحتی؟
نمیخوام چشون باشه.
چرا نمیخوای بری پیششون؟
دیگه ناراحتی چی هست؟
اینجا که خودت میدونی موقته، ما کار بچه‌ها رو راه میندازیم که زودتر برن. میدونم سخته، میدونم محدودیت تو خونه سخته، ولی اگه دختر باهوشی باشی خودتو تو اون شرایط با اون خانواده وفق میدی.
با خانواده هیچ کس نمیتونه کنار بیاد.
همینو میگن. من میدونم، من مادرتو دیدم، میدونم منم شاید با اون نتونم کنار بیام. ولی چاره چیه؟ چاره فرار از خونه است؟ چاره اینه که بزنیم بیایم بیرون از خونه بگیم آی ملت بیاید منو کمک کنید، من اینا با خانواده‌ام ناسازگارم. هیچ کس مثل خانواده‌ات باز نمیتونن سرپناه تو
شما الان راحت که خانواده‌تون چه صبح تا ظهر اینجا
از کجا میدونی؟
شب
از کجا میدونی که ما مشکل نداریم؟
حالا شما نمیتونید مادر.
چرا نمیشینی؟ با فرار کار درست نمیشه، چیزی حل نمیشه. میخوای کجا بری؟ به کی میخوای پناه بیاری؟ به خدا اینا کمکت نمیکنن. اینا همه گرگن. از تو چی میخوان؟ فکر می‌کنی یه دختر چی میخوان؟ یه دختر مجرد، یه دختر که تازه به سن بلوغ رسیده، دختر زیبا دست نخورده، چی میخوان اینا؟ اون مادری که داره سختگیری میکنه دلسوزته که داره سختگیری میکنه.
نمیخوام دلسوزش بخوره دوست دارم.
نمیخواد که تو این جامعه پرپر بشی.
موقعی که میذارن اصلا فکر بچه‌هاشون نمیکنن، تون پای سرم خجالتم نمیکشم. بیارشون سفیده رو یه دقیقه.
بیا منیره خیلی دلم بر مامانم تنگ شده. خدا چی میشد مامانم بود.
این من
میدونم چرا من به همش میگم دلم برای مامانم تنگ شده. مامانم اصلا نمیاد. فکر نکنم من دوست داشته باشه، ولی من دوستش دارم.
این میشه مادری دخترش دوست داشته باشه.
شاید بشه.
من که ندیدم.
خدا اینقدر منتظر مامانم، اینقدر منتظر مامانم، نمیدونی. همش فکر مادر پدرم و مادر برادرم بودم. وای کی بود خدایا، دیشب بود یا نم کی بود، دیروز نه 5 روز داده کنم، نه دو سه روز دیگه. و من خواب دیدم. خب چیز یعنی نه فکر میمد و شیطونه گولم میزد، میگفت مامانت مرده، بابات مرده، داداشت مرده. یه فکر رو میکردم دیگه، ترسیده بودم. نشستم نصف شب بدم گریه میکنم. همینجا میمونی؟
نمیدونم، من مشخص نیست.
چرا؟
نه دوست دارم برم خونه، نه دوست دارم اینجا بمونم.
هم میخوای کجا بریم؟ تو خیابون؟ بهمون رضا راست میگم، به قرآن به عنوان یه خواهر کوچکتر از خودت باور کن جای بهتر از اینجا نمیتونی پیدا کنی. حالا ببین، به نظر خود من اینجا خیلی بهشته، یعنی بهش میمونه. از خانواده‌ام که از خونمون بهتره به خدا. از نظر کتک راحتم، نظر فوش خوردن راحتم، از نظر چیا راحتم.
Yeah, so what we were trying to do, what Ollie was trying to do in that scene is set up what kind of place it was. And you can see that, in a way, Monireh, the first girl, is much more innocent than the second girl. She can't imagine that your parents wouldn't love you. And what she just wants is more freedom, whereas the second girl is the girl that sort of place is really for, and why Monireh's being sent home. So there's all those sort of things that we're trying to set up with that first scene. And in fact, we could... Shall we show them the second one?
Yeah.
And you can see how similar it is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
and
do,
then,
yeah,
then
yeah,
people could say stuff, or
Yeah.
do people want to say
Do you want to
anything?
say anything now?
Do you speak Iranian?
No.
That must be. Is that difficult in the edit? Not. Are you working through transcripts?
No, I never do transcripts. I always think that's a horrible job for somebody to have to write everything out. It seems really, and you know, like 14 hours of writing out. Can you imagine how much that would be?
Well, you don't get the nuances either, do you? Surely with the
Exactly.
transcripts.
And Ollie likes to watch it you know, and then somebody's there and they talk.
Simultaneously translating.
Yeah, when it's on.
That's how it
Because
happens.
then he goes, not that scene, not that scene. He has a little sister. Tell me about your sister.
Well, I'm sure everybody that edits here does the same sort of thing. You write notes about what you like, and
You give me ticks.
yeah, give Kim ticks. Yeah, you give a scene. I give a scene 1 tick if it's really good, if it's good, 2 ticks if it's very, very good, and 3 if it's got to be in the film. But so yeah, I try to be as clear as I can about what I like as I'm watching it. I find that the first part of watching rushes is the most exhausting of the editing process, but also the most important. Where Kim's come back and had a really easy or hard time or whatever, and you get to hear about it and really find out about the story behind the rushes that you're watching. So as much as we watch, we also talk a lot about how she imagines the film's going to be, or what the experience of being there was like, just kind of getting yourself involved in the story. I'll tell you what I find interesting watching that now, is, well, watching when you watch stuff that you've worked on, it reminded me that this is the first time I started working with Kim, and you said to me, gosh, you've got a real rhythm when you're cutting, and I'm like, what? I never really thought about it before, but when I watch that now, I can think that what I try to do is, I try for it to be as patient as I possibly can, obviously I need the story to keep going, but it's got to feel very natural. And that, for me, I'm quite pleased watching that now. It feels sort of quite natural. It's actually, I feel like I'm very much a part of a situation in a place. It's an experience for me. I'm actually in the room. There's nothing I hope, in the editing, apart from maybe laying over that voice, the muezzin, the chant, over the title shot, that's actually not real to those scenes. And hopefully the rhythm, the speed with which I cut from one person to another, is almost like, could be the flick of the eye or whatever. That's, I guess, I never really thought about it that much, but that's what appeared to me when I watched that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you watch rushes together then?
Yes,
Always.
I never watch it on my own. I wait until I come home, and then I watch them for the first time with Ollie. And I'm trying to be disciplined. I tried not to look to see how many ticks things are getting. But it's very, sometimes if he goes to the loo, I have a look at that to see. Because sometimes I think, God, that scene isn't in. And I think that's why the editor is such a sort of key person, because I'm sure we're all the same, that I think, oh God, that scene was so hard to get, we had to wait hours, or we had to walk miles and it was really hot, and you're remembering all the emotion that you felt when you were filming that scene. But Ollie's watching it and he's seeing it on the screen, what's going to be on the screen, and it either works or it doesn't. And practically 99% of the time, it'll be like, oh, yes, that's absolutely right. Of course he's right. It shouldn't be in. It's really, really, really rare that I think, oh, you know, that something should be in when Ollie says it shouldn't be in, because it's almost like somebody telling you what you know already, but you hoped wasn't true. You know, it's that sort of thing. You know, and then and it's very. But it's good, because otherwise I can imagine if I was editing it, I'd have a 5-hour rough cut and I'd have everything in, you know. And I remember there was a very particular scene that I still remember where this girl, Stoodler, was looking for an abandoned baby. And I remember the walk being extraordinary, that we were walking through the bush and she was looking for this baby. And it just, to me, it was the most amazing scene, this young girl looking for a baby and asking people, have you seen a baby anywhere? And it was hot and you're in the middle of nowhere. And so I always imagined that scene, we'd have this long walk and all the conversations she's had on the way looking for this baby that this woman's trying to kill. And remember, Ollie just puts one shot of the road and then you're in the scene. And I thought, yeah, that's really good. But I wouldn't have done it like that. I would have had the big build-up. You know, it would have been like a 10-minute scene, probably. Do you know what I mean?
When you walked for a long, long time.
Yeah, we walked like 8 kilometres or something to get to this place. And also, to me, the length of time to get there showed how isolated it was. And I remember thinking, oh, you won't realise how isolated this, this house is. But of course that doesn't matter. Nobody's interested in that. You know, it's not actually interesting. So I suppose that for me is... for me, what I love about the editing process is so interesting, is actually realising things about the stuff you've shot which you didn't realise at the time.
It does seem to... Yeah, go on.
So thanks for that. I'm wondering, Kim, that if you have such strong feelings about things and you then watch them together, whether you've developed a kind of secret etiquette that stops you from contaminating Ollie with your passions for particular things in the film, whether you stay stum until you've watched it, or how do you handle it?
No, I've always been like that. I've never, because I have such huge respect for editors. I think it's the most amazing job, and I've watched every single film that Ollie's edited, and I've got no nearer to knowing how he does it. When he does it, I can see that it's right and it feels really good, but I've got no nearer to be able to do it myself. It's just one of those things, you know.
But she has an amazing capacity to let go of something that she thought was right, and then if you see it, or she sees it and doesn't then feel that it's right, then she's happy to let it go, which is quite rare, very rare.
Definitely, I would never.
A lot
in
of
fact,
people
there's
find that
usually
hard.
one shot per film, isn't there, where
Yeah.
I go, oh, could we try and sneak this in? You know, one thing maybe in each, and most films there's nothing, but sometimes there's one little scene that, you know, that.
But I was thinking about it on the way in here on the tube, that you have quite a kind of fatalistic approach to the whole thing, don't you? It seems to me.
Yeah.
The filming of it, the editing, you know, it sort of is what it is. I think we're slightly similar like that.
Yeah.
It just kind of becomes what it is, and when it's become what it is, it's finished, you know, if you know what I mean. There's a weird, it has a momentum. Shots sometimes in some weird way tell you that they need to be in, and sometimes sequences that go together just fit, and you know that, and you just have to listen to your instinct and believe in it.
Yeah, that's what I don't have and he has. That's the difference. It's an instinct that you either have it or you don't. No, I definitely don't. You know, I know I don't. You know, I'm not saying, you know, and that's what editor is. It's somebody who has this instinct.
Ollie, do you have a translator in kind of one ear telling you what's going on, and then Kim in your other ear with the emotional?
No, he has complete.
No, you're just relating to what goes on on the screen, really. So the poor translator, but the person who's working very hard next to us is simultaneously translating. The sort of emotional stuff and the story, yeah, we would talk about it as possibly once we finish watching the film, watching a section of rushes or something. But no, it's not.
I don't talk
doesn't
very
feel
much,
like to.
do I?
No.
Kim, do you have a translator when you're on location?
Yes. How that would work is that I would be working with a woman who became a really, really close friend. She became like a best friend. And when they were knitting, because they chatted for about 20 minutes, and obviously you can't film all 20 minutes, so she's sitting next to me, and then she would just do that. She'd just touch my arm, and then I would film. And I knew to trust her totally, that I could trust her. That because we talked a lot about what sort of things we wanted, and we knew, and that scene, it's very clear that scene's giving you a background to what the centre's like and telling you about what they think. And if there's loads of chat about wanting to wear, different, something that's just chat, then we wouldn't film it. And she got the hang completely quickly. And that was, I've noticed with every film, sometimes you have somebody that absolutely gets it from the beginning. And then on the next film, which is Sisters-in-Law, Rob, so we'll just go in order, really.
Yeah, let's go for it.
The translator just didn't get it for the whole 3 months. So, for example, there was one scene where a guy was being sort of cross-examined by the judge, and in an informal chambers, so that the girl wouldn't be upset. And I remember I'd started to be able to pick up the pidgin English by then, and I kept hearing him saying identity card, because they would say it in English. And so I stopped filming and I said, but Florence, isn't this about an identity card? And she said, yes, it's very important. Identity cards are really important in Cameroon. And that was really freaky and scary, because then I knew that she wasn't thinking in terms of the film. She was thinking in terms of what was important in Cameroon. It's a completely different, and you can either think like Zeba or you can't, And when we were looking at the clips, the reason, I don't know if anyone's seen this, but it's a film, Sisters-in-Law. It's the second, they're in a chronological order at the moment, and it's the second film we've done together. And what I think is interesting is how similar the clips are, because both films you get a little tiny bit of geography. So Ollie does a little bit where you just get a sense of what the place is, and then you get a scene that somehow sets up what the film's going to be about. So it's a scene that usually is a self-contained scene, because that Monterey, that girl, she doesn't become a main character. But the reason Ollie could have her in and not the girl who's being raped by her policeman father was it's a scene that tells you about what the centre can do for people. I mean, I like her challenging the social worker and saying you're not forced to stay in, and her thing is about freedom, you know, and the other girl is about actually surviving, you know, the difference of it. And it gradually gets more and more heavy as the film goes on. And this one's setting up what kind of person the main character is going to be, the judge with the glasses. It's giving you a really strong sense of what she's like. But this was hard to, this was a very hard film. I do remember
it being really hard, yeah.
This took 3 weeks to just get the opening scene. We couldn't think what to have at the beginning.
No, for a long time. Yeah, should we watch it? I can't remember anything else about it.
So you're making a complaint against your father for kidnapping your child. You, the father, how did that baby get to him? How did this became managed go for this man?
Well, it been before my hand has been can't chop Xmas for my house.
Who can't chop Xmas?
My daughter with this small beginning.
Yes.
The papa become the father. I mean, Mr. Ngong himself become for check up whether for can see this he became. So he not made him mother to for.
So now you carry the bikini.
Well, as now he became madam. Now anyway, it will be so.
It is called kidnapping. It's not because she's a woman that she's not entitled to her child. Even her own father has confessed that she spent less than a week away and then he already planned a coup and called for you to come and take the child. No, that is not the way to behave. This man married this woman?
Yes, madam.
In which way?
Controversial, madam.
Which country tradition? Now, which country?
Mbonge
people.
Yes, madam.
The mommy can't make no dough. I tell they say no, the way I see the condition for the house. I no feel dream on, I go pay money for my head. And my papa this, they will go for the dairy, I be deny, I say me I no go come. So to them, some people power with the store with the papa say no, if when I see person go and I go give money for head, he say no go come for this marriage. That means say you no like it they married. I deny for go madam, but the mommy they work out for they go give money for my people them. If you are the suffer so then they suffer me for the kind thing. Because me I be deny me say I don't tell me no five, I don't want tomorrow and I have to say go back daddy. They go for the work out go give money. As my father no be see me they tell the money to the chop.
Yes, so after the dowry, did you join their hands together traditionally and say this is your wife from today henceforth?
Yes, madam.
You be carry this woman in hand so?
No, no been carry.
You call people, you put them inside this man in hand, say take na your woman this. So you did not do that, so they were not married. He merely came and gave you some money which you took.
Madam, the thing is, when as soon as he don't be with he don't born picking, it means na he must now.
No, listen, okay, you be mistaken. The born I'm not out of wedlock because if mommy no get marriage certificate. You did not marry that lady.
Madam, when I saw this lady, okay.
Listen, I don't want long stories of a lightning flash
not like
in 1940.
Not 1940, madam.
Just tell me, did you go and marry this girl?
So I went straight to the family. I took this 80,000 francs. They gave me a bid that now that you have got a child, you should bring us a pig and some of those small things.
This your daughter has become a merchandise. The way you people play in the village, the way you play with women and children, that's what makes her his wife. 80,000 francs and some pig. All right, madam, tell me what should I do to two of them?
Madam, for I don't want any problem.
You don't want any case?
Yes, madam. Only the ones that make him only the picking.
You are sure that you can take care of this baby?
Yes, madam. Even if I want the picking, that's why food. They say food they for that. Or if they don't look proper.
What is he crying?
For me, this child is for two of us. I don't say that I've owned the child. If he says
no, you were not entitled to custody. What you did was a very grievous offense. That's what you men do. You just harvest children all over the whole place without marrying the mothers.
Yes,
Pa, don't do that again. If you have another daughter like this, don't do that again. Have you heard?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Go write your withdrawal and bring it.
Thank you, madam.
It's quite interesting how similar those two clips are, that they're doing the same thing. They're setting up a sort of atmosphere.
Yeah. I think they're trying to, I sort of feel with that one that we were trying to do something, you're seeing something unexpected. It makes you want to know who Vera, the chief prosecutor, district attorney woman, is you really want to know who she is. Wow, she's got the strength to stand up to those guys and just put them completely in their place. So sometimes it's a you try to charm people as a way into a film. But in this one, I sort of felt, well, it's funny, so that is charming, but also you just think she's an amazing character and you really want to know more about her. So I think that was what we were thinking of that. Has anybody got any questions, anything they want to know about that?
You saw that they were quite similar. It's like a pattern of the beginning. And I remember when we were trying to find the first scene, it was the same thing again, kept trying to get something quite dramatic that would then link into something else. But actually it's quite nice just to be able to watch something, for the audience just to watch something which isn't too much work, and you can just start finding your feet and get a sense of atmosphere, rather than it be the beginning of a story that you're going to, and the beginning of the stories is seeing that she's a democratic woman, that she asks the woman who's obviously very illiterate, hasn't had any education or anything, she's asking her what to do, and the way she talks to her is really nice. And the disdain she shows for the guy that thinks he's going to, charm her, the way she just brushes him aside. So there's all of that as well going on in that scene. So it's not necessarily a very dramatic scene, it's just like a scene setter in a way. And I learnt that from Ollie, that you don't have to go straight into the drama. You can actually just take your time a little bit at the beginning and set a scene. So.
How much footage did you have to work with to make that scene?
If that's a 4-minute scene, I don't know what it is now, but probably 7 minutes in total. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Kim doesn't shoot very much. I mean, that's one of the brilliant things, is she's really very much in the moment, I always assume, when you're filming. Yeah. And you're thinking really about the structure of the film, or what it is that you're filming. And
I'm also thinking, there's a bit of horrible camera work in it, like when I go very close to the woman. I'm also thinking that Ollie's going to need to cut. So I'm thinking, better get in close. And it means that it's not so nice to watch as if it was, that if I could take time. But I wanted to get to her before she started talking, so that he could cut after she started talking or before. So some of it's a little bit hectic, and I'm getting a bit better at that now. I think the camera work's getting a bit better.
I kept all those pans, or there's 2 of them, I think.
Yeah, and those horrible zooms.
Yeah, and but I think you do get the space of where she sits, and that she's below, but actually she's totally in charge of what. And there's something about the sort of geography of the room that Kim always gets amazingly well. So sometimes it's better to keep it, I find, than to cut around it.
Yeah, I love it when the zooms get cut out.
Yeah.
But they often don't.
Yeah, I don't remember, was that one of the, there are some scenes in films that you have to revisit again and again and again and again. Like in the last film we did, there was about Salma, a poet in Chennai. She sits on a doorstep with her aunt and tells us her backstory, starts to tell you her backstory. Wow, I don't know how many times we did that again. I don't know what it is about that scene. It's fine now, I'm fine with it. But
because it was
we
quite
did
long.
Go back again
it was like
and
an
again.
8-minute scene.
And there's something not clear about the focus. You really got to be clear what it is that you're trying to say with each scene, obviously. And sometimes it shifts in terms of what the film has become. So you need to kind of revisit. And that scene, for some reason, as often, I don't think that was the same.
No, cutting the scene was easy.
Yeah.
But it was choosing to have it at the front.
Yeah.
That
it's
took
true.
ages.
Yeah.
So normally Ollie cuts the actual film quite quickly. And then it's just like the beginning and the end. You have to put a lot of thought into how to start it and how to finish it.
Weird kind of indefinable thing, isn't it, where you're watching a film and you know that the person that made this film is completely in charge of the material. Because you can relax because nothing is left. Hopefully, it's all really tight. I don't just mean in terms of the cuts, but there's nothing left for your imagination. They absolutely sort of. You feel yourself being pulled through a story, hopefully in a very comfortable way, and that's what it's quite hard to do. Well, very hard to do. I find it really hard every time.
Because actually, I've noticed something quite interesting. I don't know if other people have had this as well. But that film's quite old. It's 2005, so it's quite old now. But when it first came out, I remember we had a screening like this, and I had some really close friends at the screening, and they're filmmakers, and one of them was like a really close friend. And I remember we were chatting like this, and she was with a whole group of people, and they said, oh, we really didn't like Sisters-in-Law because there wasn't enough context. So I went and sat with them and I asked them what context they wanted, and I wrote down the kind of things they wanted to have at the beginning. So one of the first things, because I told my friend how many women judges there are, and there are a lot of women judges, and she said, but you said there were this many judges. I'd like to have known that Salma's one of many judges. You should have had that at the beginning. And then everyone was saying all the different things they wanted at the beginning. And it would have been like a lot of either voiceover or text or a lot of information. And then when I went home, I sort of looked through it really carefully to think whether, the film had missed out because I hadn't got how many women judges there were. And I felt better when I read through them, because I thought if you'd had a thing at the beginning of that saying there are 180 women judges in Cameroon, which is quite interesting, then somehow by saying the statistic, you're saying that somehow Vera is one of 180, and so she becomes an example of something that's bigger than herself. She becomes an example of all these other women judges. Whereas actually there was a woman judge in the office next door to her called Madame Rose, who used to walk along when her orderly would whack people with this big stick to get them out the way so that nobody touched her. And she would never have said, what should we do with the two of them? She used to take bribes as well. And what's interesting is that guy who says I gave the 80,000 francs is assuming because he's got money that Vera's going to have, make it a result in his favour. So there's all these other little undercurrents going on. So as soon as you put one bit of information on, you're actually excluding other information. You're saying this Vera's one of many, not Vera's an extraordinary woman. She's absolutely unique. She's different, and she's like a pioneer, And then I thought, I don't know if people. Sopranos is also quite old. It came out at the same time, I remember, and I remember thinking, nobody ever says to the Sopranos, you should have how many mafia there are in New Jersey. And nobody wants Tony to be one of many people that are like him. He's obviously a one-off. They don't all go to psychiatrists, but you're learning an awful lot about mafia and about that whole culture by going deeply into his life and finding out about it. Do you see what I mean? But I've noticed in the last 4 years, really recently, that people aren't saying those sort of things anymore. And I think it's because of the internet. I think because if somebody sees the film and they think, oh, I'd like to find out about Cameroon, I'd like to know the colonial history. That was my other friend who wanted a colonial history. She wanted to know why people were speaking English, all these other things. Now people can Google things and find them out. And they can find out what they want to know. And actually, even something like that, I don't feel that I know enough to actually give a colonial history. And I could also, I notoriously keep changing my mind about things. The more you find out about something, the less sure you are. And in fact, that would be a really good thing to go to these next 2 little clips, Rob. They're 2 short clips, which is 2 and 3 of Sisters-in-Law. And it's this character in Sisters-in-Law. It's only like a minute each one. And she starts off, and she's this woman, Lum Rose, who's been really torturing this little girl in the film, really does terrible things to her.
Physically, yeah.
And she's a really nasty woman. And I remember thinking, I hate her, and, and God, I'm glad she's going to jail, and, because she gets convicted and she gets sent to jail, and it's a big landmark case because, people don't go to jail for abusing children like that in Cameroon. It's quite tough there. And then you'll see the second clip, which is funny because that's the clip where Ollie was cross with me for not holding the shot long enough, but where Vera goes to visit the woman she's put into jail. And she does that. She's not doing anything for the film. She knows all the people in the jail, and she's put most of them away. And she takes them food, and she looks after them, because there's no way, if you're in jail, if you're ill, you don't get drugs or anything. And you see from the beginning of the first clip, you can see that the woman's actually pretending to be sorry because she's scared of the family. Whereas in the second scene, because somebody shows compassion to her and is kind to her, she cries properly for the first time. It's something breaks in her. And I find that really interesting, what I like in films is the way you change how you feel about somebody through the course of a film. As the film gets more complex, you start changing how you feel about people. And perpetrators become victims and strong people become weak people, you know, and I like that, and Ollie's always really aware of that. He's always layering things like that.
We try and do it like a drama, don't we?
Yeah.
I think we think about it. Obviously we want it to be as sort of experiential as possible, hence if you put lots of captions it tends to kind of set you back from the story that you're watching, whereas if you're just seeing Vera being incredibly powerful and brave and strong and sort of progressive and just funny, then you're really intrigued, you're drawn into the story, you don't really need to know that much about it, it's the same. And so, yeah, we sort of, I think we both believe that, you know, any non-fiction film can be just as kind of dramatic and thrilling as a fabulous kind of drama film, and that's what, I mean, we don't try and kind of make it exciting, but it's, I think if you're just allowed to experience it, watch it and feel it, it's better than being told stuff.
But it's still upsetting if people want more, because you feel you've let them down, you haven't given them what they want. So it's still very upsetting. I always write down what people want and they didn't get. But you can't do both, actually.
I sort of resign myself to the fact that yeah, because I think people, you always want to know more. It's, you know, you read an article in a magazine or a newspaper and you want to know more. I think it's just a natural. I just don't think you can include it all in a film.
No.
I think the drama of being there is more important sometimes. But sometimes we've never done a voiceover one, but we've done captions. Especially, I feel like we've done captions more and more as in the last few.
Yeah, we're trying to help. We're trying to give more info.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Some stories need more than others, I guess.
And give me you the phone man talk me, bring his speaking back. I call when another answer because I want kill him. No be so.
I just send being tongue because moving. Magama no kawara so ayimba.
Because you tell woman okay.
Malu songo tama matana wada ndangwane the me phone ndangwane malo inga uti for 3 months. Why no we send the Pikin back?
Only say me apologize for the Pikin openly. We understand. For any other thing, me apologize before God and man with the Pikin.
Manka, I don't think you don't beg, mommy. I don't know me say the chances and I'm bad I can do for you. I wouldn't make it say what are you going to change for me? Oh, Manka. I don't beg you, mommy. I beg you. I don't beg you. I beg you, mama. If you never was a man, why do you call me that so? I mean, if you not say to you, nothing doesn't mean that the night say, I don't know you started doing that bad thing. I only beg you that so, mommy.
Even B5 is partly what
that's the thing. If they don't say so, no, it's toy for already.
But
then what's the one for your call? I'll not be good. The one because you don't hold me over. Don't go see me. When they feel like me some next year, it doesn't go outside the day. I'm not getting money to buy anything. What's the prescription? I'm not going to consult that one. I don't only talk about my ill overflow. Or I go consult that one too, son for me. You know means they will hate you, yeah? It just means you know not two you do, but two you do, they really be terrible. We not hate you, yeah? No cry now. No cry. It's okay, no cry. I'll buy the medicine. Sometimes you keep quiet. Sometimes you want to see December 1 reach. They will give decree. They cut that month then day. See, not an animal they day for you. Look this much of it. No, no cry now, no cry.
I remember when we were filming that, feeling really ashamed that I'd had so much hate for that woman, and seeing, with her shaved head, seeing that she was a victim and probably never got any love and probably had the same experience with her parents. Because as soon as Vera starts being nice to her, that's when she sort of, And the crying is completely different. You know, the way she cries is, one is just show, and then the other's a real crying. And so I remember that being quite a shock to realise how vengeful I'd felt, you know, before. And I would never have dreamt of going to the prison to get a prescription for her. So, you know, and it's all showing the audience about what kind of person Vera is as well, how amazing she is, that not only does she get justice for these people that have had awful things done to them, but she also cares about the perpetrators, which I think is extraordinary. I think she's well ahead of what we're like in this country. And that's another reason why I didn't want it to be 180 women judges, because I'm sure none of the other judges would have done that ever. I mean, none of the judges here would go to prison to check out the prisoners, you know. It's just like, she's just extraordinary. So.
Kim, can I ask, how do you go about getting ideas? Like, how do you even find out about Vera and have the ideas?
Did people hear the question? It's about how we get ideas for films. Well, in fact, I've just come back I went to check a story out, which seemed a fabulous story, and I went there, and I've just come back. And the people were wonderful, and I loved them, and I loved the situation, but it wasn't a film. And I think, in a way, it's such a big thing to commit to making a film. You have to be really sure it's going to be a film. And I always feel, you know, like 80% sure, and then there's an element of risk, you know. So it's something that you think it might be a good story, and you're just prepared to take the risk. But the story I've just been to check out, I thought, I love these people, I'd love to spend 3 months with them, and I admire them and love them, but there's not a film there. So I don't really know, each time it's different.
For Sisters-in-Law, what planted the seed? Like, I know you then had to decide whether it could be a film or not, but before that even?
The sort of path to it was, I'd made another film in Africa and discovered these incredible girls and young women who were doing amazing things. And I remember thinking, there's all these extraordinary stories going on in Africa that we don't hear about. We only hear about the natural disasters. And actually, it's not just people from here, because it's quite fashionable to say, you know, we should give equipment to people in those countries, which is obviously really good. That should happen. But often, when you're in the country, the people that have got the power and the equipment and the money don't want to tell the stories about ordinary people. They would be much more likely to have filmed Rose, the rich lawyer, and they would have been more impressed by. Do you see what I mean? So it's not just about outsiders filming outsiders. It's to do with gender, to do with class, to do with all the other things. So it's quite complicated, really, about... because I often get that, people saying, well, who are you to go there and make that film? And I always get very defensive, and then I think, well, if we hadn't gone to make a film about Vera, nobody else would have done. You know, they wouldn't have thought, they would maybe, the people there that were making films about the politicians or the glamorous people, a lot of films about film stars and that sort of thing. You know, but it is, that's changing as well, I'm sure.
You know, when you're talking about the start of the film,
yes.
Have you ever been in a position where you've changed that opening to a film very late on in the editing process, or do you get that right to start with and go, well, I can move forward?
That was
never get it right to start with. Never. Very, very rare. Actually, I'd say Runaway was different. Yeah, we did get that quite soon. But ever since then, the other 5 films I've done with Kim, no, I wouldn't say. It takes a long time. So you sometimes right at the end. Well, not right at the very end, but because I think you actually can't tell the whole story until you've told the beginning, which is kind of really exasperating and annoying, but it's true actually.
Yeah.
The whole flavour, your feeling towards it, whether you're drawn in or whatever, I think is the opening's the most important thing. No, I don't think you finish the film and make the beginning. Well, you know, you don't cut everything else. I think you need to know exactly what the story, the setup of the story before you can finish it. That's my answer to that. You say? But I'm interested in what your question about how Kim chooses stuff. And how do you know? Because on this, that was very tricky, wasn't it? That shoot. How did you know when you met? It was a horrible shoot. I mean, it was probably the worst shoot I've ever been on, because I didn't get on with the woman who was translating, and at all.
we had completely different ideas about what the film was. And then also got ill, and it was just a really, really difficult film. And it's so nice when you get on well with the people the last three, I've really got on well with the people that we've had such a nice time together, and all the problems have been outside us. You know, they've been to do with, you know, the sadness of what you're filming, or the difficulty of your surroundings, or, you know, but that one was the only one I can remember where the actual, you know, the filming was really tough, because, and also she changed when she was there. She became incredibly superstitious and started to believe in all sorts of weird things, that which was very difficult.
Was that the translator?
Yeah. Started to believe in that people were becoming snakes at night, and just sort of really strange stuff. So it was quite frightening to see somebody changing in front of your eyes, and that was all very odd.
But did you decide you wanted to make a film about female prosecutors in Cameroon, and then you kind of found Vera and thought she'd be...
Oh, no,
did
no.
you decide
No.
you wanted to make a film about Vera? Is that...
The question was, did I just want to make a film about prosecutors and then Vera? No, because actually, if it hadn't been Vera, I wouldn't have wanted to make a film about the other prosecutors, because they were all incredibly corrupt and really full of themselves. There's another lovely lawyer there who's Vera's best friend, but all the other lawyers, and there's actually quite a funny scene where this woman is taking her husband to court for beating her, and the lawyer for the guy who's been beating her, I loved him, but he's such a slippery character, and he keeps trying to bribe Vera, and you can see he's trying to bribe her. You know, and I wouldn't want to make a whole film about him, because there'd be something quite nasty about it, making a film about somebody that's got completely no morals at all. You know, it's nice if you're making a film about somebody you really like.
How did you know Vera existed?
Oh, well, I went with this woman who I thought was wonderful, and we travelled around and we were looking at stories. We tried to find a story, and I very rarely do that. And then right at the very end, we were there for 3 weeks, she introduced me to Vera, and she'd been at university with her, they're contemporaries. And that's when we found out about Vera. But we'd been looking at other things. We'd been looking at women police. They drive around on motorbikes. And then a friend of mine who was working as a clerk in a court here said, oh, they're incredibly violent and corrupt, the police. It's not, you know, you don't want to, you know, and I Googled them and found out that how, you know, that I wouldn't want to make a film about, just because they're women doesn't mean that, you know, you want to make a film about them, you know, the police. And so, you know, she'd told me things in London, then when I went there I discovered that things weren't what they appeared in London at all.
Had any thoughts about making films in the US or Britain, in a country where you speak the language, so where language isn't necessarily an element that can play with you or against you?
Did people hear the question? Is it about whether we'd thought of doing film in Britain? And in fact, that's very good. Oh no, well it's actually
It's out of order, isn't it? Is that
it's
right?
number one. It's Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go, Rob. So you have to skip Rough Aunties and go to that one. So we'll show you an English-speaking clip. Well, strangely enough, this was the easiest film to make because it was in English, so that was lovely. And then I was doing it just me and the sound recorder, so we didn't need a translator. So it was much easier to make the film. It felt really like a real luxury. And also I could go home at weekends and
But they were a lot more media savvy, weren't they? They were a bit worried about what kind of a film you were going to make.
Oh, the staff were horrible.
The school were really
Some of the
worried
staff
that you'd
were
make
really
some kind of
difficult.
formatted...
That was the main problem, was the staff. A lot of the staff were
They were
worrying
written
about
up,
what the film was going to be like. And the other problem was, for me, was making a film in a school and realising that the kids wanted their parents. And that was a horrible shock for me, because I'd never wanted my parents. I just assumed that everybody didn't particularly care about being with their parents if they were in a nice place. And this was a lovely place. You'll see in the clip how nice the staff are. And yet they all wanted their parents, which seemed... oh, Brittany. How weird. What did I do? I feel like I'm in a pop video. I've been watching Pop Idol, which is why I said Britney.
Yeah.
So we could show you a clip in English. That's what we could do, and it's just like a scene, and again quite near the beginning of the film, and it shows how the staff work, and that they don't, because my boarding school was all punishment and really nasty. But even though it was such a nasty school, none of us wanted to go back to our parents. I don't remember anyone ever saying they missed their parents. Whereas this is a lovely place, and yet the kids all miss their parents, and that's what this little clip is about, finding out what, instead of punishing the kids, it's finding out why they're behaving the way they are rather than punishing them, which I thought was a revelation for me.
Do you mind if I just set the mic up a bit?
Shut up.
So I don't think Ines should be with you if you're being rude. I'm going to take that away. Excuse me.
No, it won't.
Mind your elbow.
It won't take my book. Just shut up, bitch.
So when you're ready, you let me know and start thinking about this. Take that out of your mouth, please, unless you want to do some thinking about this later. I'm not going to argue about it, Michael. You can take that out, or you can do some thinking about why it's not a good idea later. Okay, if you're not able to think about it now, I'll take it away, and you can think about it later. You're not going to sit and hurt me. Just turn the chair away.
No. You fucking assholes. Fucking assholes.
I'll hold you like this so you can't turn around and hurt me, okay? You tell me when you're ready to think about it.
Go with me. Go with me, you stupid bitch.
Right, all of this over a reading book.
I've lost it for sure.
Leave the blind alone.
I know I've lost it for sure.
The question is how much you'll be doing. Now, can you leave the blind alone?
My chest.
If you show me now that you can start to think, I'm going to be a lot more sympathetic later on, aren't I?
Yeah, I'm just on
So could you leave the blind alone, please? Well done, Letitia. How are you going to start to turn things around? What's the first thing you need to do? It's not that. What's the first thing you need to do, Michael?
I'm gonna try and get going.
If we need to go out, then we will, but that's not going to get us any further with it. The first thing you need to do is sit for 5 minutes doing nothing. Ines, could you go and see if someone from Sheffield can come and give us a hand, please? Thank you. Sorry, Letitia. Ines will be back, okay? Damien, can you stay away from Michael, please? Michael, you are going to need to sit for 5 minutes and start turning things around. When someone from Schiffer comes, you sit down. Sit down. When someone from Schiffer comes, we're going to go out, so you haven't got an audience, okay? Can we go out with Michael, please?
Bitch slappy.
Take him.
Bitch slappy. Bitch slapper.
Come on.
That looks almost a little bit greeny there, doesn't it? Can you see?
What?
So why do you think, Michael? I don't think you're concentrating.
Yeah, I am.
Well, show me that. Why do you think you keep spitting at people?
What do I do? I'm angry.
Right, hang on a
I
minute.
know that one. It's
before you write
disgusting.
it. Right, that's not the question though. It says,
You
do
want
you
to break this pattern of always spitting? Yes.
So
Why
you do want to stop?
Yes, I do want to break the pattern up.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay, can you think of any other ideas to help you remember not to spit? Well, really have a think. Because I'm not doing this for the fun of it or to get back at you. I'm doing this because I want to help you stop spitting. Right, is that pen distracting you? Thank you. Right, I'm going to get you a tissue while you have a think about that question, okay?
Well, can you help me?
Right, you can start having a look at this and thinking what you're going to put on your card. So who do you need to make a sorry card for? Okay, right, is that one finished? Thank you. Let's have a look. What's the suspect say? I was angry and...
About my dad marrying his girlfriend.
Ah, when did that happen?
He's getting married in February.
Is he? Have you just found out about it?
Yes.
When did you find out?
I don't know.
So what is it that makes you angry about that? Have you been able to talk to your dad about it? Michael?
No.
Right, when are you going to speak to your dad?
On Friday.
Right, so do you think you can talk to him about it? What do you think you could say to your dad?
I love you, Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss you so much.
Yeah. And you think that's what you've been thinking about this afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, I watched that and remember how stressful and sort of emotional it was.
Yeah,
I find that film
I used
quite
to
hard.
cry when we were editing
Yeah, we
it.
did. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember thinking, you know, his father doesn't want him. None of the fathers of those kids want the kids, and they're all quite abusive fathers, and they've got these wonderful teachers, and yet they all want their parents, and I just didn't get it, you know. So to me that was a revelation and made me rethink a lot of things. Because I think we all have this. You go through life thinking you know certain things. You don't even know what the things are you think are true, but you know they're true, and then you suddenly discover that all the things you thought were true aren't true at all. It's, you know, and you have to rethink. And I think that happens in every film. I go in thinking something and I come out and I think, oh no, it's not like that at all. It's completely different, you know. So I'd had this idea that most teachers are not very nice people, and they're quite, you know, and that they enjoy discipline and all this. And then I came out making this film thinking teachers were the most amazing people in the world, and being so full of respect for them, and puzzling over this whole thing about kids having this thing about their parents, you know. It's just, and you had a, you know, it made you.
Oh
think
yeah, it
different.
makes you. Well, that film always makes me upset. It's good. I'm really pleased with it. But yeah, it makes you think about being a parent and yourself as a child and all that. It's good. Yeah, it was. But I do remember doing a lot of walking around in between.
Yes.
Like, let's just have a little bit of a breather after that one. It was quite
Yeah.
intense, but there's lots of scenes where the children are restrained physically. There's a scene much more difficult to watch than that one, and that's quite hard for me. But yeah, you really. I think, well, in terms of the editing, there are jump cuts in there where you recognise that time has passed. He's got a pen in his mouth. You cut down to him, and he's already finished the card. But I think he's already finished the card that he's started. That you feel like he hasn't had much time to do. But I think I don't know, you get away. I feel like you get away with the time passing. The most important thing is that the sort of the emotional journey carries on, and at the beginning you think, how's she ever going to reach him? How's she ever going to get through to him? And amazingly, Kim is filming an extraordinary piece where she makes him understand about himself. I don't know how long was that filmed over, an hour and a half or something like that?
No, about 12 minutes.
All right, gosh. The other thing I was thinking is Kim's really loves sync, the words. It's really important watching people telling their stories, and I think one of the difficulties I often find in your films, and the scenes that she films are amazing, but the space, you need a lot of space, both sometimes at the beginning of a scene and often at the end of the scene, in order to be ready to take whatever's going to come next, because if there's too many words, it'll just sort of batters you, really, or could do. So it's creating enough space as well. I find that's another reason for sort of stretching time somehow. And in this film, I remember we talked about it. You were there 3 or 4 months. I don't know how long, but we talked. I remember giving you we talked about a list of shots that we would need to pass time,
right, yes.
and maybe film in the kitchen, or you don't want too much. It doesn't want to be kind of, you know, well, sort of arty or anything. Well, we didn't feel like it should be, but you do need a lot of space if there's a lot of talking, which there often is. In the
That's
films we've
been
done.
really, really helpful for me. I don't know if other people have this, where the editor tells you things that they think they're going to need. So Ollie gave me a list of things that he thought I should film, which he would need, because we knew there were going to be very emotional scenes. So he actually said, why don't you try and get, you know, because you wanted the seasons, you know, get the trees and the place round the school, so you can see that, because otherwise it seems like, because Michael at the end is this completely different kid, and it's important to have the sense that he's been there. You know, this has happened over a year, so there's a scene of the trees with all snow on it, and Ollie said, get the trees in different seasons so that I can then pace it to show that time's passed, and that sort of thing. And that was really, really helpful.
And similarly in Salma, we talked about the film that Kim and I just finished. You didn't know that you were telling a backstory. I can't remember when we had this conversation, but we talked about filming the character without her saying stuff, so that you had a lot of time to actually watch her thinking. And it's quite it's a very internal story, Salma. It's about a woman who'd been locked up for a long time by her family. You do need to, it's the space, I'm talking about space really. I find that one of the hardest things when you're editing. You don't want it to be too long between the bits of sync, but you really, it needs to come at exactly the right moment when you're ready for the next jump in the story, the next movement forwards. It's hard to get.
You talk. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
You talk about going for walks and things like that. And a lot of your films are very heavy. Like Rough Aunties is it's quite a difficult watch at times. And I'm just wondering how you both handle it.
I think it's easier for me because I've lived through it, so I know what to expect, and the handling has been done there. But I think it's quite tough for Ollie because he's suddenly, having all these in this tiny little edit suite and all this quite heavy stuff to watch. And I think it's, but we take loads and loads of breaks because, we might chat for a couple of hours in the morning, and then we'd watch some stuff, and then we'll talk about other stuff. Or when I come back, I might just tell him for the first week. A lot of it's to do with just chatting about what it was like and the kind of things that we were trying to do, and that sort of thing. And then
do you actually choose the order in which you show Ollie the rushes, so as to sort of build up in the way you want to tell the story?
No, we watch it chronologically because I haven't seen any of it either. So, and sometimes I'm watching stuff and I think, oh yes, because it's so difficult a lot of the time filming. You're running after somebody or trying to get stuff, and often when I'm watching it with Ollie, it's also you're one remove when you're watching it with someone else, and you're watching it just in a rather cold way because you're watching it on a screen and you're judging it, whereas when you're filming it, you're living it, which is, I remember that scene with Lum Rose when she's kneeling at the little girl's feet in the police station, and I'm kneeling on the floor, and I'm like this close, so I'm really close to the woman and the kid in the police station. And I remember having a weird feeling coming over me because I knew that she wasn't being authentic. I knew she was putting it on for the family, that it wasn't real sorrow. She wasn't really sorry, but she didn't want to be punished by the family. She was trying to get off. And I remember filming it and thinking, what we do is so weird. It's such a weird job because I'm watching it and I'm thinking, Ollie's going to see this, and I'm thinking about what he's going to make of it. But at the same time, I'm feeling what I'm filming about the little girl and thinking, this is a bit creepy. I wonder what she's feeling with this woman kneeling at her feet, the woman who's been abusing her, kneeling at her feet. So I'm thinking that at the same time as shooting it as a scene. So it's very weird. I think it's a very strange job we do. And I know that there's been times when the sound recordist I work with on both of those films, the one in English and the one Sisters-in-Law, and she became quite critical, and I could understand exactly why, because she's thinking, we're filming people in distress, and maybe we shouldn't be filming it. She felt there was real times when she felt we shouldn't be filming things. And I would always say to her, look, if we don't film it, we can't decide later. If we film it, then we can decide in the cutting room whether we're going to use it or not. But we've got to film things. That's what we're here for. We're not here as friends. And she found it more, we don't work together anymore. She's found it more and more difficult each film. And the last one was Hold Me Tight was the last one. Was it? Yes, it was. Yeah. So and I think she just thought, no, I don't want to do this anymore. It feels weird. And you do have to sort of close off. Actually, we could show the Rough Aunties clip is Rob there, you know, the Rough Aunties clip. And that's a kind of example of it, where you're horribly close to somebody, but what I found nice about it was that she goes, that a really close friend of her, her dearest friend, her son-in-law has just been murdered, and she's gone to clear up all the blood in the room. And what I was trying to explain to Mary was that Jackie really was pleased that we were there. Not the filming bit of it, but it was nice for her to have somebody there. And you know, people say this whole thing about observational, tell people not to talk to you, tell people not to look at the camera, pretend you're not there. It's so clear that she knows we're there, but she's talking to herself. She's trying to make herself feel better about this horrible thing that's happened. He hasn't died yet, he's still in hospital at this point, and they're trying to save his life. And I felt comfortable being with her because she's chatting to us. I think it would have been weird if she hadn't been chatting to us. I don't know what you think. And then we filmed, there's another little bit that follows on from it. And I think sometimes I feel the opposite. I feel it's actually really nice when people talk to you, if they want to. You know, I'd never interview somebody, but if they feel like talking to you, it's actually makes you feel less intrusive in a weird way. So see what you think about this clip, see if you think that or not. But I remember this, Mary really didn't like filming either of these two scenes. Bobby Bear! This way the robbery was.
Oh, shame. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Okay, ballistics has been here. Just see if we don't tamper with anything. Oh, shame, shame. Oh, the poor kids. The guy had good blood clotting qualities, which ought to save him a bit.
Kingsway Hospital won 50,000 rand deposit. We don't have 50,000 rand deposit. So we're going to try and see if we can transfer him to McCord's.
How much is McCord's?
3,000.
Okay, I've got 3,000.
No,
in my
his
bank
sister's
account.
she took 20,000 rand loan now to put him in Kingsway, but it's going to cost her about 150,000 rand in Kingsway. So we're going to, she said I must just get bank details, she'll transfer all the cash into my account.
Because I've got cash if you need cash. Is he okay? Tell me about him.
He's on drips, but he said it's whitish, and he's in this other hospital that's very dirty. My auntie's gonna try to transfer him back to Kingsway.
Yeah, we're going to help him try and do that, okay? Right. Are you scared?
Yes, because they got the house keys. They got the house keys.
Well, we've got the guys here. We're changing everything. How's that? And what will happen is we'll get the house keys and everything changed, okay?
because they got their own thing.
Do you want a cup of tea or something? I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
I've got a beautiful lady called Hanneke. She's a psychologist.
Yeah, that's funny.
And I'd like you to talk to her. What do you think?
Yeah, no, the quality thing is sorted out.
Hey. And how's your mum?
My mom's fine. She's with my daddy, and my sister's with my daddy as well.
Okay, we're just cleaning everything up, okay? Do you mind? What we're going to do is we're going to clean everything up and we're going to do your laundry for you. How's that? So you don't have to do it. How's that? Hey? Shame, my baby, you're being so brave, hey? You're so brave. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. That's my sister. She opened her eyes. This time when they broke in. I was sleeping and then I heard fire shots and my daddy was going outside, and then my daddy wanted to come in there by the passage, and they come and they shoot at my daddy, and he took his gun and he tried to shoot one of them, I think around about here, because and then they pinned him down to the floor and they shot at him here and then the hand, my father, and then there was lots of blood on the floor, and then one of them went over my daddy, and my mom tried to strangle him, but then he pushed her away and he tried to shoot my mommy, but there was no gun. There was no bullets left in it.
God is good, eh? And your mum fought him.
Excuse me?
Your mum fought him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's also, we all have different feelings about when things are upsetting, whether they should be filmed or not, I think. And I think in a way that's another thing that we're trying to work out when we're editing, is what should be in and what shouldn't be.
And obviously you want to be incredibly, especially in a situation like this, really responsible to the story, the characters that the people that you're making a film about. But at the same time, maybe it's the same when you're thinking about filming. I'm the same when I'm editing. The film is the most important thing. It's not about what Kim feels, not about what I feel. It's somehow the story that you're trying to tell in as truthful a way as you see fit, really. But scenes like that are really hard. Does anybody else think?
I was just wondering about what was going through your mind when you were obviously in very close proximity to the little girl, and then you move the camera around and you get closer. So what's actually kind of going through your mind at that time, and how close are you?
The question was what was going through my mind, because I move slightly and I get closer. Well, actually, and this is the awful thing. It's this. I can be completely honest, because we're all filmmakers, and I can just tell you, because part of me, is thinking, God, this poor little girl, her dad's probably going to die and she's been through this trauma and she's so brave and she's brilliant. And I'm pleased I'm filming her, because actually I think in this country we often underestimate kids, and I think that little girl is so strong. And she's really pleased that it's in the film. She felt very proud of it being in the film, and the one thing the family wanted was a photo of the father that died at the end of the film. And they felt that somehow his death it's part of a campaign to make the hospitals take you, even if you haven't got the money. They wanted to do something with it. But then the other part of me, which is a part I feel ashamed of, but it's a part that has to be there, is thinking, oh God, it's very noisy here, so I need to get closer so that Mary can get the booming closer. Also, there's an awful lot of light coming absolutely at me from the window. I need to get round slightly so that I can get the glare out of the lens. And I'm on my knees, so it's slightly awkward, so it's a bit wobbly, and I'm thinking, is it better to have the glare or is it better to have it still? So I'm thinking, well, I'll do a bit of each. I'll get closer and I'll take a bit of the window out, so there'll be a bit of a wobble, but I'll try and do it as still as I can. And it feels very weird, almost monstrous, to be thinking those two things at once. That's very odd. It's a very odd feeling. And at the same time, when I'm filming Jackie and the blood, I'm thinking it's really lovely that she's chatting to me, but I'm thinking I've got to work out so that those two shots can cut together, so I'll get a close-up of the blood, so then I can have a wide shot. So I'm thinking like that, which actually I always feel slightly embarrassed and ashamed of.
The first clip that you showed of the prisoner, and she's crying, but she's kind of putting her hand against her face, and she's hiding from you.
Yes.
But you carry on, and you kind of keep your shot even when the judge has left the room, and I think that's like,
I didn't hold it
great.
long enough.
Really, but enough. It seemed enough.
Not quite. It would have been nicer just to have had a little bit more. Well, the thing is, I think often people think that people are hiding from us, from the camera. So, for example, I've had people saying, "Oh, she's obviously doing that for the camera, that when she's crying in the police station, that's obviously an act for the camera." But it's so not for the camera, it's for the family. She's really frightened that the family are going to kill her, or, you know, they could easily just stick a knife in her or do something awful to her, because it's quite wild there, you know. So that act she's putting on, I think, were the least of her problems at that point. You know, she's not interested in us at all. She's really scared that this family is going to take it out of her. And she's also trying to seem as if she's sorry, so that she'll get more lenient treatment from the police and from Vera. So that's much more what's going on, but people often think it's to do with me. And a lot of the time I'm sort of kneeling on the ground, or I'm in a very sort of lowly position, and I'm not actually that. That little girl was much more interested in Jackie than she was in me.
Oh, no, sorry,
you know. I know you meant with. And I think when Lum Rose is ashamed, she's ashamed in the prison, because Vera's saying, "We don't hate you. What you did was bad. We don't hate you." And I think that brings up all the shame for the first time, and so she can't look at Vera. That's why she's doing all the stuff with the bag. It's like this full weight. It's probably the first time she's really admitted to herself what she's done. We were talking about that just now before we came in, how often people make up stories for themselves to defend their actions, that we're humans very clever at actually explaining things that we do to ourselves. And when that gets torn away, it must be quite devastating. And probably why torturers don't admit what they've done to them. They must you know, make it okay to torture another person by maybe not seeing that person as human, or I don't know what all the the arguments are. And I think she stopped seeing that little girl as human. And then when she's in the prison, Vera's making her realise that what she did was wrong. It's kind of amazing, I think.
How much time do you spend together in the editing room, and how is that beneficial or to the film? Like, how much we spend together, working together as a team, or not?
I'd say each film, say a 90-minute film, takes between 10 to 12 weeks. I think that's what, maybe the last one was slightly longer. I think if it's in a foreign language, it takes longer. But I seem to remember Hold Me Tight, Let Me Go was quite a long edit as well, the English one.
10 weeks.
I think it was a difficult film, emotionally difficult film, as we talked about, so that took a little bit longer. But you're there all the time. Sometimes...
Yeah, I never leave his side. I'm totally watching, but I don't say it. I mean, there'll be a whole day where I won't say anything.
Yeah.
Do you ever fall out?
No, we haven't so far. No, we haven't.
No, I'm in awe. I don't. There'd be nothing for us to fall out about, really.
No, it's weird. There's a good connection, and we sort of feel the same way about most of the stuff that we film. I think if you know someone quite well, then you, I don't know. It's easier to just get on and do your thing. I mean, generally we do sort of talk about it all the way through, don't we?
Yes, bits.
I don't know. It's a weird process. Sometimes, you know, you're an editor, it's the same. You're one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes it goes really, really well. Sometimes you get really stuck. Yeah, I don't know. You just like to be there all the time,
I just
don't
love
you?
being there. I find I learn so much. I learn about filming. I love watching the magic of it. I would be very sad if I hadn't seen how those scenes were put together. I love watching them. It's like watching something being done in front of your eyes. And I remember when Ollie used to share edit place with another. There was these 2 other guys in editing rooms next door, and I remember this guy coming out, Steve, and he said, "Oh, I would hate to have somebody there all the time. You poor thing, Ollie," in front of me. And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, maybe it's awful." But I think when Ollie's into cutting, I think he forgets some there. You know, when you're really concentrating, I think you're not aware of the other person being there. And I make lots of tea, and I sort of look after, make sure everything's okay.
It is a bit like that. I don't know. It has to be the best film editor-director relationships. They're sort of you got to be trusted, and you've got to trust that other person, and then you can do your stuff. And Kim definitely makes it, I don't know, enjoyable. It's fun. We try and laugh. Even some of these films are really quite very heavy films. You've got to have a laugh as well. And sometimes it's really nice having a translator as well to kind of break it up from just being the 2 of us, if there's someone else there. And so you're all on a journey really, and I don't know. It's weird. I was thinking about Sisters-in-Law, for example. We thought of the title Sisters-in-Law, and actually weirdly, it was not for a long time did we think of it as a film about the 2, Beatrice and Vera.
That's
don't
right.
you think?
Yeah, yeah.
I remember we suddenly just put a title saying Beatrice Judge.
Yeah.
And then now it has become, weirdly enough, a film about 2.
Yeah.
But I never really saw it as that.
No.
It just kind of, sometimes the films kind of creep up on you what they actually mean, don't they?
Yeah.
Or what they're about.
I think that's why I don't talk very much, and I think that's why it would be difficult if I talked all the time, because I think Ollie needs time to just be able to just sit and think sometimes, or just daydream, or look out the window, or just think. And I think if there was a lot of talking going on all the time, and the last translator we had, actually, that was a very nice thing about him. He never used to chat.
No.
He just used to translate when Ollie wanted it, and the rest of the time he was very quiet. I think if there was a lot of chatting, when you were trying to work, I think that would be very difficult.
Also, he doesn't sort of brilliant Harry in the last film, the Salma film about the poet in India. He didn't really make a lot of observations about what he thought was the story was about, and that actually is really quite helpful. I know that sounds a bit mean, but if you have, I find when I'm editing, if I show it to too many people, I think Kim thinks the same. If you show it to too many people and you get too much feedback from, I think it's so important that your vision, your instinct, your thoughts are your own really. To my mind, I used not to feel the same, but I think if you show it to friends, right at the very end we have sometimes, but only really.
Last few, have we?
No.
We show them to anyone.
No.
How often do you watch the film as a whole during the process?
If we say Salma, maybe did we watch it about 6 times or something like that? Do you think something like that? I would think as a whole. Yeah. I think you get better at believing in yourself. Oh, I certainly feel like I have. And we've been lucky, when people come to see it, mostly they like it, and you don't have to make a lot of alterations, and you get more confidence from that as well. It makes you feel that you can trust yourself. You are going to get it right without too much intervention. Yeah.
I've got friends that have these screenings, like Nick, who Claire works with. He has all these screenings, about 50 people, 40 people, and then everyone says, I just think that's just, that's how he does it. I would absolutely hate that, because I take it so to heart when people make suggestions. And if everyone's saying something different, I don't know how you deal with, everyone saying different things. I think it's just what we do is try and make the best thing that we, the 2 of us, are happiest with, and then just hope everyone likes that.
Definitely.
Do you guys ever feel that you get kind of too close to the footage that you're watching, and you kind of need to take a step back and see it as a whole? And if so, how do you do that?
Well, not working too late helps. Not working weekends help. I think distance is everything. I can come up with an idea for a beginning or a sequence or the music or whatever it is. I find when I'm in the bath or walking to work or whatever it is, away from. I think if you just, it is an immersive process, but it doesn't mean you need to sit at a computer to do it. That's my take on it really. And I think sometimes the less times actually in front of computers a helpful thing, because otherwise you're just fiddling, and computers draw you in a way, and you can get lost. Of course you can get lost, But there's something about that. I mean, Kim has an amazing way of filming the right material. Say, I'm looking at that scene with what's her name?
Michael.
Mopping the blood.
Oh, Jackie.
Jackie mopping the blood, and I think it was cut off at the end. But if you have she's filmed that scene, and we've talked about it earlier. But the bit I love is the trampolining on the end, because it was cut off, but actually we left it for not a very long time, but long enough for you to just calm down from what you've just seen. And Kim has an amazing way of getting that kind of material, which she's a child on a trampoline, and you just have enough time.
Sort of thing,
yeah.
you know, that she's
just
actually...
an innocent person caught in something, and one shot is all it needs to tell that story, and she manages to get that. So of course you get lost, you definitely get lost. But there's some kind of a momentum. We seem to be lucky. One, she gets some amazing material, and two, there's enough trust between us to feel we can do this. I mean, Salma was a case in point. Kim, the last film that Kim did, you found it very hard. It's not like anything that you've seen here. Mm-hmm. The action doesn't happen in front of you. Kim's not there when someone's mopping the blood. The blood or the story that should have been in front of you happened many years before. So that did sort of make you think of doing it in a different way.
Actually, we could maybe talk about that. I mean, that was like a really weird thing, because I've always thought that filming observational, I mean, it's not really observational, but filming events it's kind of easier because you have a story that you're following, so you're filming something that's happening as you watch it, but also harder because you have to be on your guard and aware all the time. You have to just make sure you get them up in the blood, you get them talking in the corridor about, raising the money, and then you get the kids, so you're really on, you and the sound recorders have to be really on the ball, sort of thing. Whereas a film where most of it's happened in the past, I always thought it's much harder because you're having to make it interesting and dramatic in its own way, but at the same time it's easier because it's more manageable. But I remember what happened with this last film is the film was meant to be about the main character, and she was running a welfare. She'd been locked up all her life, 25 years, and then she got out. You discover through the film how she got out. But and she had this amazing job for only 4 years, and where she was helping all these different women and breaking all the rules and doing amazing stuff. And it took me quite a long time to raise the money. And by the time I'd got the money, and it was all misunderstandings, and the guy was leaving and who was going to give us the money. Anyway, it took ages to get the money. And then the couple of weeks before I was going out to make the film, her translator said, "I want to meet you for lunch." And I met her, and she said, "Oh, I hope you know, Kim, that she's lost her job. She's not doing the job anymore. She's just at home. She's very depressed. She doesn't really go out anymore." And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this film? It's impossible, because I don't make films where nothing happens. How am I going to? I'm going to have to make a film out of nothing. So I phoned Ollie, and I told Ollie, and I said, "Ollie, do you really still want to do this film? I really understand if you don't want to do it, because it's going to be hell, how we're going to do it." Because I just couldn't bear to give the money back. I thought, it's been so hard getting it, I don't want to give it back. And there was nearly 3 years between the two films. And there'd been, the film I tried to make before had fallen through. It had a horrible 2 years when I thought I was never going to make another film. And also because I thought it was such an important story to tell. Not just that, but it's an invisible story that's happening all over the world. Millions of girls are being locked up, and we all know it really well. We all know it. We just accept it, that this is happening. But to actually see what it means and to live through it with somebody would have been amazing, and shown her fighting it and being this person who was trying to stop it would have been amazing. But she'd lost her job. So, and I don't think I would have had the courage to have made it if I hadn't have had Ollie saying he would do it, because that made me feel better. When I wasn't sleeping at night, I'd think, oh God, Ollie's just going to have to come up with something. And then Ollie told me to film things. He told me things to film. Like when he said earlier, film Salma not talking, film her so that we can, weave the story in. And he told me very,
parallel stories
I did all
we
the
tried
things
to do, didn't we?
Told
Sort
me
of,
to do. Yes.
We tried, Kim started filming sort of a parallel story to Salma's. a young girl who was going through the same thing that she had.
So yeah, all these things, so you could watch it happening to other girls, but it was actually Salma's story, but it was millions of other girls. So that's how I tried to do it, but it was really scary. So so we could show you, Rob, we could show, it's the very last clip, if that's okay.
There's a lot more interview, isn't there, Kim? That was the other thing. So
It was all interview, you know, and I hate interviews. And I always say, the thing is, I always say to people, I hate interviews and I hate documentaries with interviews. Why should there be interviews just because it's a documentary? They should be like fiction. You should be seeing things and learning things for yourself. But there wasn't any other way of doing it. And also, how do you tell a story of somebody being locked up without interviews? You know, I just couldn't see how to do it.
It happened so long ago.
Yeah, it happened long ago. It started when she was 13, and she was locked up from 13 to when she got married. And then as soon as she was married, she went to her husband's house, and she was locked up for another, 25 years in all. She never went out, you know. So I don't know how you tell that story.
No, but in other ways it's quite exciting because it's not going to be, we're going to have to tell the story in a different way, so that's quite good. Oh gosh, okay, so Kim's filmed lots of interviews. How are we going to do it? But I think she's an amazing woman.
She is a wonderful, I think.
So she's incredibly kind of appealing and easy, and you just want to know her story, and you feel there's something about her. You feel like you want to know her, and she wrote some amazing poems, which we've included.
Which are very, very sort of shocking poems. I mean, shocking not as in shock, not in morally shocking. But I mean, nobody's seen it yet. I mean, it's just finished, and so we don't really know. I know a lot of people, probably all the people that like the ones we normally do are going to hate this, and the people that always hate, you know, it's going to be, it's always upsetting though, but I mean there must be some people that will like this, but I don't know.
Let's have a look.
இந்த கல்வி சீர்திருத்தம், பெண்களுக்கு கல்வி வழங்குவது அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு நிலைப்பாடு, அதற்கான முயற்சிகள் நிச்சயமா பெண்களை ஒரு சமநிலை அடைவதற்கு, அவர்கள் இன்னும் சுதந்திரமான நிலை அடைவதற்கு உதவும் நினைக்கிறீர்கள்.
இன்றைக்கு இல்லையெனில் நாளை, நாளைக்கு இல்லையெனில் இன்னும் ஒரு நாள். இப்படித்தான் தெரியும் இந்த வாழ்வை, நினைவு தெரிந்த நாள் முதலாய்.
தரமான பூண்டு, ஒல்லி மலை பூண்டு, 1/4 கிலோ பூண்டு 15 ரூபா. 1/4 கிலோவே 15 ரூபா பூண்டு. நாட்டு பூண்டு 1/4 கிலோ 15 ரூபா. ஒல்லி மலை பூண்டு
வாங்கிங்களா? நல்லா இருக்கு. முடியலையா?
ஆமாம்மா, அரசவே அப்புறம் என்ன, ரொம்ப நல்லா பார்த்து பார்த்து பண்ணி என்னையா குச்சி வச்சு அடிக்க வந்திருக்கா. சரிம்மா, மணி ஆயிடுச்சுமா. அந்த ஜன்னல்ல வெளியில் உலகம் பார்க்கணுமா ஒரு ஜன்னல்ல
என்ன தெரியும் இந்த வீட்டு கூரை தெரியுது
சொன்னாங்க அந்த இந்த பக்கம் இருக்குல்ல அந்த பக்கமும் இருக்கும்ல அங்கே நின்று அங்கே தெரு அந்த பக்கம் தெரு இந்த பக்கம் இந்த சைடு அந்த தெரு தெரியும் இந்த மாதிரி
ஐயோ நம்ப முடியல என்னால் நான்லாம் எப்படி பொழைச்சிருப்பேன்னு தெரியாது
இந்த வீட்டை காட்டி இந்த ஜன்னலை காட்டி வெளி உலகம் பார்க்கணும் இந்த ஜன்னலே யாரும் ஆம்பளைங்க வந்து உடனே வெளில அடிச்சது ஓடிட்டும் இல்லை யாருமே இல்லை சாப்பாடை கொடுங்க உங்களுக்கெல்லாம் வாப்பா பொடி பொடி பார்த்து நாளைக்கு போயிடுவியா சாப்பிடுறது இல்லையா அது வேணாம் ஏன் வந்துட்டு போக மாட்டேன் வாங்கி தண்ணி கூட குடிக்க மாட்டேன் ஆமாம் கேட்க மாட்டேங்குது நாங்கள் இருக்கோம்ல இந்த ஒரு வாரத்துக்கு நான் இருக்கிற வரைக்கும் ஆச்சு இடிஞ்சிச்சு அம்மா அப்பான்னு நினச்சா அவங்களுடைய ரொம்ப அவங்க சந்தோஷமாக இருந்தனால ரொம்ப குறவு அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி தான் தெரியும். அம்மா எப்போவுமே பயந்துகிட்டே இருப்பாங்க, அப்பா எப்போவுமே சத்தம் போட்டுக்கிட்டே இருப்பார். அதுதான் என்னுடைய குழந்தை பருவத்தில் அதிகமாக இருக்குது. 2 பேரும் ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமாக பேசியோ சந்தோஷமாக இருந்தோ வெளியில் போயோ எனக்கு எதுவுமே ஞாபகமே இல்லை. அம்மா எப்போவுமே ஒரு பயத்தோடு இருப்பாங்க அப்பாவை பார்த்து. சாப்பிடலையா சாப்பிடுங்க லேட்டாக சாப்பிடுவீங்க. இது என்ன அது இது இன்று வாரம் என்னது முட்டை போடுறேன் போகுது. அப்படி காத்தல நான் உண்டாயிருந்தப்போ அத்தா என்ன மாதிரி உங்களை இது பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தாரு, அடுத்து என்ன பிள்ளை வேணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு அது ஒரு பையன் வந்துக்கிட்டே இருந்துச்சுன்னு சொன்னீங்க இல்லையா?
பையன்தே வேணும்
இல்லாட்டி டைவர்ஸ் பண்ணிடுவேன் அந்த மாதிரியெல்லாம் சொல்லி ஆம்பளை பிள்ளை வேணும் அப்படின்னு.
ஆம்பளை பிள்ளை வேணும், இல்லாட்டி இது அடுத்தது எதாக இருந்தாலும் இது பையனாக இருந்தால் பார்க்கலாம், இல்லை இது வந்து பொண்ணு பையனாக இருந்தால் வச்சுக்கலாம், இல்லாட்டி அடுத்தது கர்ப்பத்தரை பண்ணிடணும்.
பிறந்ததும் அங்கே விட்டு வந்துட்டீங்க, அந்த விஷயத்த சொல்லுங்கள்.
அது அவங்க அப்பாவுக்கு ஃபஸ்ட்டு 2 குழந்தை,
3ன்னு சொல்லுங்கள். ஒன்று
3ஆ? அப்புறம் அவர் அந்த அம்மா இறந்துச்சுன்ட்டு அப்புறம் என்னைய கல்யாணம் பண்ணாங்க. எனக்கு கல்யாணம் பண்ண பிறகு இதுவும் பொண்ணாக பிறந்துச்சு, ஆண் குழந்தை வேணுன்ட்டு இதுவும் பொண்ணாக போச்சு அப்படின்ட்டு இது அம்மாட்டே விட்டுருங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு எங்கள் அம்மா வீட்டிலே விட்டாச்சு. அவங்க கிராமம் அங்கேயே விட்டாச்சு. அப்போ அங்கேயே கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சம் வளர்ந்தோம். அப்புறம் 5 வயசில் இங்கே விட்டு வந்து படிக்க வச்சான். எனக்கு வந்து அது ஒரு இது தெரியாது, பிள்ளை விட்டுட்டு வந்துட்டுமே அப்படிங்கிறதெல்லாம் ஒரு இது தெரியாது. 2வது வந்து அம்மா அப்பா நல்லா வளர்த்துக்குருவாங்க அப்படின்ற ஒரு மனசு இது.
எவ்வளோ வயசு இருக்கும் அப்போ? சல்மா பிறந்தப்போ உங்களுக்கு ஒரு எவ்வளோ வயசு இருக்கும்?
எனக்கா 17 வயசு. 17 வயசு தான்.
That was sort of what I grew up thinking people did, actually, more, that you just give your kids away like that. I mean, I find it very intriguing, the matter-of-factness of it, as well, the way people are very matter-of-fact with these terrible things that happen to them. Oh, that's the little window I was locked up behind for 25 years. You know, the way people talk about their experience I found really interesting. And also that when Selma asks her mother, why did you give me away when you had me? The mother can't say it to her, she says it to us. And I found that really interesting about filming, that sometimes people can ask really taboo questions that they would never have the courage to ask because there's a third person there. But also that person can have the courage to answer because you're there. It would have been much harder for her to say to Selma, oh, I was too young to care, I didn't really care. it seems very upsetting to say it to a daughter in a way, but it's easier to say it. The honesty of it, I think, is amazing, but it's easier to say it to a third person, to be honest to a third person. I find that absolutely intriguing. That happens all the time with all films. I find that again and again. I find that really interesting that people find it really safe to have other people there. They wouldn't ever do it if you weren't there.
Also, I think having for me, watching it this time, having the voiceover before that, where you know that you're going to be in Salma's head and she's telling you that she had a really, really tough time and her parents didn't get on. It's you know it's hopefully it's asking you to read the scene between the mother and the daughter in a different way. You can tell that there's a lot of distance between them, and there's a lot unsaid, and somehow that voiceover allows you to kind of get into her head really, and to know that she and you are questioning everything that happened in that family from the start, I guess.
Yeah, and critical. And then what I find fascinating about life and films, which is the same thing to me really, is a bit like Lum Rose. You start off thinking, you know, being critical of Mum, and then Mum becomes a hero. You know, Mum is the one that saved her, but Mum was her jailer, and Mum gave her away. And what's extraordinary is the Mum gave her away to a 7-year-old little girl to look after. Just gave her, she didn't know, but she got given to this 7-year-old girl who could hardly lift her. Her parents didn't look after her at all, which is what she hoped.
And thinking about beginnings of films, just to, you know, that feels like we've thrown the kitchen sink at it in some ways.
Yes.
You know, you've got photos, you've got music, you've got voiceover, you've got poems, but ultimately it's just saying this is how we're going to tell the story, and you know, that's the way it's going to be. And if you just keep motoring, then hopefully people will come along with you. But yeah. So it feels. I mean, that is the opening for me. Is, you know, openings of films. This is the story. It's like pulling the curtain back. There you go. You know, and you're taking someone on a ride, on a journey, and hopefully that intrigues you. I remember funny enough, there's a piece after this where just the very next shot, she talks about the father over him. I think it's the next shot. And somehow that voiceover, the voiceover that I put over the father looking straight ahead at the camera, sort of unlocked the film for me in a way. It's a bit like I'm saying.
I remember when that happened. Ollie there's a shot of the dad just looking into the camera like that, in this very weird way, and then he says, she's a good girl, but she's too clever. She condemns everything we do. He just says that, comes from nowhere, and Ollie held that shot, and then he put a little bit of voiceover where Salma says about how awful her dad was, how violent
angry
he was.
All the time.
Angry.
He was always angry.
And then it goes, he's always angry. And then it goes into, and then he suddenly talks. And that was like I mean, I would never have had the courage to do so. It would never have occurred to me to do that. That's what I mean about editing, that Ollie's breaking all the rules again. And just, so Salma's talking about him, and then he suddenly says something. And that's really near the beginning, so hopefully you're saying, well, we're going to actually have to do this completely differently, because this story starts in the past. It catches up with itself, but it starts in this past that you wouldn't understand. There's no way, you can't understand. For me, what was really hard was to understand how a mother who loves her daughter can lock her up for 25 years. That was what the mystery to me was, and that it's happening everywhere. And you get these gorgeous little girls of sort of 11, and they're full of life, and they're loving life, and they're full of the sort of childhood, and you know they've got a few more months and they're going to be locked in a little tiny dungeon with bars. You saw that barred window. I mean, it's just a horrible thought that you will spend, you know, like 25 years. Well, I mean, it's a miracle that Salma got out, you know. So I suppose that's what we're trying to. It's quite a difficult concept to get over for people that don't know it. Whereas girls that have been through it, or girls from that background, will understand it immediately. So you're having to make it interesting for both people, and I think that's quite hard to do, really.
It was also really enjoyable to be able to put, you know, music on it that wasn't sitars or tableau or whatever. And I remember with Sam, the composer, he wasn't really sure about that very kind of the chamber orchestra, whatever it is, the quintet playing, the strings playing for that scene where the mother's cooking with Salma. But somehow we just, that was right for us. We really wanted to sort of, we just went with that, and that's a really nice feeling when, you know, we're going to go with that. And it gives it a kind of universe. Yeah, that's the other thing, watching all these clips. I think sometimes, just talking about beginnings of films, you go for what's really universal, and it feels so universal. I can just imagine myself going home to my family, or other people going home to theirs. You know, that there's something about that at the beginning of a film that is another way of drawing you in. It just,
because in all relationships there's the weight of the past, and particularly with families, because families, well, I mean, I shouldn't really, trouble with my family, I can't really speak, but there was all this anger and hatred and remorse, and you're having a perfectly, what for an outsider might be a completely normal conversation with somebody, but there's all this thing. So Salma's kind of joking with her mum, and yet she's telling us that woman locked her up in that little tiny room. So and then you're watching them and they're sort of interacting. So it's kind of like a very strange balance of, you know, and I just don't know how else we could have done it really, because we couldn't do it in the old way. We couldn't do it if you just watched them. You wouldn't know what you were watching, because they seem to get on okay, you know, and Dad seems okay now. He's an old man, you know, but so you have to have voiceover. I don't see how else you could do it really.
No. We talked about it being a sort of detective story. You obviously, like a lot of films, you're trying to sort of unpeel the truth really. So, and the voiceover and the fact that conflicting voices, her take on the past and the parents speaking to camera was so conflicting, and that was really interesting. Just how two sides see a very traumatic, in her case, a very traumatic past. We enjoyed that. I liked that contrast was good. And
well, all that older generation, and Salma says it at one point, they're all pretending that everything's fine, which I think families do. So mum's pretending everything's fine, grandmother's pretending everything's fine, and they're all pretending that they're happy. And then Ollie put a bit of voiceover where at one point they're having this horrible, horrible meal, and Ollie puts this bit of voiceover where Salma says, oh, everyone's just living a lie. They're all pretending they're happy. They don't want to accept that they're in pain. And I find it very exciting that he's done that, because I think you need it over it, because otherwise you wouldn't necessarily see it, you know.
Whereas if you put a bit of voiceover, probably of Jackie speaking over as she's, you know, clearing up the blood or whatever, that would just feel awful. In this film, I hope it works. Yeah, yeah.
Because they were pretending to be happy all the time, was it difficult to get reality on camera?
No, because they do. They're devastatingly honest. Like Mum says, I was too young to care. I didn't care that I gave my daughter away, which I think is brilliant. And Salma says at one point, I didn't want boys, you know. And I just love them for being so honest. And there's a real matter-of-factness. I actually read a little quote in a story I was reading yesterday, and they said when people have had really difficult situations, they're not sentimental about them. They're just facts, like mountains. You just say the facts because they've been so traumatic and so big, and your whole life has been like that. You know, they've all been married at 11, 12. You know, they've all been locked up. They've all had the same experiences. They've all been married to people they've never met who are much older. So they just say the things, and it's, for them, why Salma's so wonderful is that she's rebelling all the time. That's why Dad says she's too clever, because all the others have accepted it. But Salma is the first woman to break out and say she wasn't going to accept it, and that's what the film's about. All the others go along with it because they don't see there's a way out. I mean, the dream I have is to have, and I don't know how it can happen, but to have a lot of girls to watch it, but also families who are going to do that to their own kids. But also, I think, for me, I mean, Dad was just like my dad. My dad was always incredibly angry, you know. Oh, and there's a scene with her husband.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
When she says...
oh, you got to see that.
Well, there's a scene with her husband where this wonderful woman we were working with, she says to him, why were you angry all the time? And he looks really shocked that he goes, well, when you're a boy, you're jealous, and then when you get, you know, when you're growing up, it's you're arrogant, and then when you get married you hate the kids, you know. And then he says, and then he looks all confused because he doesn't really know what the anger came from. So nobody's in touch with why they've behaved the way they do. It's just what everyone's done for
always been this way, yeah.
thousands of years. It's just how it is, you know. And Selma's constantly making people think about why they've done things. That's what she does because she's a writer. And that's why she's so dangerous. You know, she's an incredibly dangerous person.
The fact that she lost her job, did it have anything to do with that?
No, she got the job because what happened was her her mum smuggled the poems out, and then this publisher read them and thought, my God, he was a non-Muslim guy, a Hindu guy, read the poems and thought they were completely amazing, but nobody knew who she was and thought they must have been written by a man, and then discovered it was this woman writing them, and then the poems made her really famous. Like, she became a sensation, and then her husband got her to become a politician because then the family would get money if she went into politics. So he completely dropped all his, she wasn't allowed out, she couldn't show her face, that all went, and she was suddenly allowed to be a politician. So he's gone through this huge change and is completely confused, doesn't know really what he thinks. So one minute he'll say, anyone else would have divorced you by now, I've put up with a lot, you don't realise how lucky you are. And then at the same time he's thinking, why was I so angry? Because it seems pointless now, all the anger. He threatened to pour acid on her, he used to beat her to stop her writing, you see. So it's like people get trapped. And I think that's what Vera does with Lum Rose. She's so human and humane. She sees beyond what people do to the fact that they're trapped in these roles and forgives them. And in a way, Selma, she hasn't really forgiven people, but she's trying to, you know. But she's also incredibly damaged. I mean, if I'm waiting for DHL to come or something, I'm desperate by the end of the day if they don't come all day. But she was locked up for 25 years. It's kind of unthinkable, really, you know, that it's like the longest prison sentence that you can. And she had a picture of Mandela in her little cell, which I think is fascinating. That's not in the film. But she said all her friends had cricketers and she had Mandela in her little cell. And you see it, she goes in there and you see it's got barred window. It's a barred window and it only looks out on a wall. And she and her sister used to fight to sit near the window, even though you couldn't see anything out of it. I mean, it's just, when you sort of realise what it actually means, it's so shocking, you know, what people live through. So you can sort of see why we had to do it, but you can see why it's kind of very counterintuitive. And I sometimes feel ashamed because I've said things which I believe, but, you know, I've done the opposite. I hate music in documentaries in the film, I hate interviews, I hate when people, you know, I hate backstories, all those things, and we've sort of had to do it, really. So
clearly, you really wanted to have a strong impact. What do you think you're going to do with the film?
What's going to happen is Salma's going to have it. So my flatmate's a publisher and he wants to publish a book of her poems in English, which have never been published before. And they're amazing. They're things like, I have sex with my husband to bargain to get some sanitary towels. They're very, very, you know, because you really get a sense of what it's like to live with somebody that you hate, who's you're terrified of, is stopping you going out and stopping you doing anything. But you have to, it's like a jailer and the, Mandela talks about it wonderfully, you know, how you have to, or kidnappers have it with their hostages, you have to kind of try and win them round to get a little bit of respect and to try and get what you can. So she talks about, there's a poem, the poems are very, very, and the poems are about the wedding night and what it's like and those sort of things. So Colin wants to publish a book of the poems, but then also I've written a little chapter about what it was like making the film, and then Salma's going to write a chapter about her life in it. So that, hopefully that will really get her to be read more. And then, I don't know, I mean, that's the trouble really, because we're all busy making films, it's really hard to know how to distribute them.
Thank you very much. Obviously a very special relationship. I wonder if you have the same relationship with other editors and work in the same way.
Other directors?
Other directors, sorry.
Not as kind of trusting as Kim, no. I mean, I think there's a lot, I mean, as a professional editor, I think a lot of the difficulties, even if you've been around and done it a long time like I have, because I have, 20-something years, scary. A lot of the time you have to go in and prove yourself, even if you've, you know, done lots of stuff before. And that's really exhausting, whereas, don't want to be, Kim just creates an atmosphere that allows me to do stuff, and it really works that way. There's not enough trust, basically, often in that is what helps you to, or certainly helps me to be creative and to really be free to interpret something, to interpret a story. That's been. I don't think I do have the same relationship as the answer.
Right.
No.
A very creative relationship. Thank you both very, very much.
Well, thanks for being so nice.